The Black Widow had no family, no money, and nowhere to run when her legs finally gave out on the dusty Wyoming trail. Temperance Blackwell collapsed hard against the packed earth, her husband's worn leather satchel spilling from numb fingers. 3 days without proper water. 3 days since they ran her out of Copper Ridge with nothing but the clothes on her back and lies about debts she never owed. The sun pressed down like a weight. Her vision blurred at the edges where heat met. Sky. Dust settled on her dark skin, mixing with the salt of dried tears she'd shed miles back when crying still seemed worth the water it cost. Through the haze, she saw them first. Worn leather boots, cracked at the seams but well maintained. The kind a man wore when he had little but took care of what he owned. The boots stopped 3 feet away, close enough to help. Far enough to run. She lifted her head. The effort sent the world spinning. A white man stood against the sun, his face shadowed beneath a weather-beaten hat, tall but not imposing. Lean in the way of men who worked for their meals. His clothes spoke of long miles and careful mending. Nothing fancy, nothing threatening. He knelt slowly, hands visible, empty. "Ma'am." His voice came out barely above a whisper, like speaking pained him. "You're dying out here." Temperance tried to push herself up. Her arms shook with the effort. The stranger made no move to help uninvited. He waited. "I can help," he said in that same wounded whisper. "But if you come with me, there's no going back to who you were." She studied his face, pale eyes that had seen too much, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. But no cruelty there, no hunger for power over the helpless. The choice crystallized with brutal clarity. Die alone on this forgotten trail, or trust a white stranger in territory where such trust could kill them both. Her hand trembled as she reached toward him. His fingers closed around hers. Calloused palms, gentle grip. He pulled her upright with surprising care, steadying her when she swayed. "Name's Silas McCready," he whispered. "Most folks call me Silent, Temperance Blackwell." Her voice cracked on the words. He gathered her scattered belongings without being asked. Her late husband's Bible, the small cloth bundle that held everything she owned now. A few coins that wouldn't buy passage anywhere worth going. "There's water in my canteen." He offered it without ceremony. She drank carefully, fighting the urge to drain it dry. The water tasted of metal and salvation. "Thank you." He nodded. Toward a horse grazing nearby. A sturdy mare, nothing fancy but well-fed. "Can you ride?" "I can manage." But when she tried to take a step, her knees buckled. This time he caught her elbow, steadying her until the weakness passed. "Been walking long?" 3 days. Something shifted in his expression. Not pity, something harder and more useful. "From where?" "Copper Ridge." He went very still. "That's a hard town to leave on foot. Wasn't my choice." He asked no more questions. Instead, he helped her to his horse and lifted her into the saddle with careful strength. She felt the warmth of his hands through her worn dress, brief and impersonal. He swung up behind her, close enough that she could feel his breathing, close enough to kill her if he meant harm. But his presence felt protective rather than threatening. "Where you headed?" His whisper stirred the air near her ear. "California, if I can make it that far." "Long way for a woman alone." "I know." They rode in silence through the afternoon heat. The horse's steady gait lulled her toward sleep, but she fought it. Trust only went so far. She needed to stay alert, to watch for signs of danger or deception. But as the miles passed, her body betrayed her. Exhaustion pulled her down like deep water. Her head nodded forward. "Rest if you need to," Silent whispered. "I'll wake you if there's trouble." She wanted to refuse. Instead, she let herself lean back against his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath her shoulder blade, human and reassuring. When she woke, the sun hung low and red on the horizon. They'd stopped beside a small creek lined with cottonwoods. Silent was already gathering wood for a fire. How long was I asleep? Few hours. He struck a match against a stone. You needed it. She slid down from the horse, legs more steady now. Why are you helping me? He fed the small flame with dry grass, not looking at her. Maybe I know what it's like to have nowhere to run. You're white. You got choices I don't. Some chains don't show. The fire caught, casting light across his scarred knuckles. Some prisons got no bars. She studied his profile in the flickering light. What kind of prison you in? For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he reached for a leather satchel tied to his saddle. His fingers traced its worn surface like a man touching a wound. The kind you build yourself, he whispered. The fire crackled between them like a confession waiting to be spoken. Temperance stared into the flames, feeling the weight of Silent's question hanging in the desert air. 3 days of running had built walls around the truth. But hunger and exhaustion were patient demolitionists. My husband Samuel worked the Graves mine, she said finally. Good man. Honest man. The kind who believed hard work would earn him respect. Silent fed another stick to the fire. Sparks rose and died against the darkening sky. Mine owner claimed Samuel stole gold. Said he found evidence in our cabin. Her voice carried the flat tone of someone who had repeated this story to deaf ears. Funny how that evidence appeared after Samuel died in a cave-in. The flames cast shadows across Silent's face. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Samuel was planning something before he died. Spent nights reading by candlelight, making notes in margins of newspapers. Said some debts got paid in sunlight, others in shadow. She picked up a pebble, turned it over in her palm. Never got to tell me what he meant. Cave-ins happen in mines. This one happened right after Samuel asked too many questions about missing or shipments. The pebble disappeared into the darkness beyond the fire. Jeremiah Graves showed up at my door with papers. Syed Samuel owed the company for stolen gold. Said I had 24 hours to pay or leave. Silent's fingers drummed once against his knee, a barely visible tell. Deputy Marshal Kane walked me to the town line personal. Made sure I understood the consequences of coming back. She looked up from the fire, met his eyes, so I walked. 3 days through country that kills women who walk it alone. The wind stirred the cottonwood leaves overhead. A sound like whispered secrets. Why California? Samuel and I plan to start a school there. For children who look like me. Children who need to learn that words on paper can be weapons too. Her hand found the small bundle of her possessions. Still got the deed to the land we bought. Only thing Graves couldn't take. Silent reached for his leather satchel, then stopped. His hand hovered over the worn strap. I'm not just a drifter, he whispered. She waited. The fire popped, sending up a shower of orange sparks. I'm searching for someone. Been searching for years. His voice carried the weight of long roads and empty leads. Person I need to find is in California too. What kind of person? The kind that deserves better than what they got. He opened the satchel just wide enough to reveal folded papers, the corner of something that might have been money. Need help reading legal documents, proper reading. The kind that catches what men try to hide in small print. Temperance studied his profile. You're asking me to work for you. I'm asking if we can help each other get where we're going. The offer hung between them like smoke from the dying fire. She knew the mathematics of survival. A black woman traveling alone faced certain death or worse. A white man helping a black woman faced suspicion and violence. Together, they faced different dangers. What aren't you telling me? Same thing you're not telling me. His pale eyes reflected firelight. We all got ghosts. She considered this. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. Storm weather. I can read legal papers, she said finally. Samuel taught me. Said knowledge was the only thing they couldn't steal if you hid it well enough. Then we have a bargain. They shook hands across the fire. His grip was firm, calloused from work she couldn't identify. Not mining, not farming, something else. One condition, she said. I don't ask about your ghosts, you don't ask about mine. We get to California, we part ways clean. Agreed. But even as she said it, she wondered if clean partings were possible. Between people who had seen each other's desperation. Some knowledge changed you. Some truths built bridges you couldn't burn. Silent banked the fire for the night. She spread her thin blanket on the hard ground, using her bundle as a pillow. He took first watch, settling against a tree trunk with his rifle across his knees. Silent. Ma'am? Why do you talk like that? Like speaking hurts? His hand moved, unconsciously to his throat, because sometimes it does. She wanted to ask more. Instead, she closed her eyes and listened to the night sounds, crickets and distant coyotes, the soft whisper of wind through grass, the quiet breathing of a man, keeping watch over her sleep. When she woke before dawn, he was still there, still watching, still protecting. They broke camp in silence, efficient as people who had learned not to waste daylight. She climbed into the saddle with less help this time. Strength was returning to her limbs along with hope. As they rode deeper into the territory, she noticed him checking their back trail. Not paranoid glances. Professional assessment. Someone following us? Maybe. His whisper barely carried over the horse's hooves. Dust cloud been pacing us since yesterday. Fear tightened her stomach. How many? 3 riders. Maybe 4. She looked back but saw only empty horizons shimmering in the morning heat. Could be anyone. Could be. But the way he said it told her he didn't believe in coincidence any more than she did. Jeremiah Graves had long arms and short patience. For loose ends. They rode harder that day, putting miles between themselves and whatever shadows followed. The sun climbed fierce and white. The land stretched endless and unforgiving. By evening, they reached a trading post squatting beside a creek, weathered buildings, a few horses tied to rail posts. The kind of place where strangers paid for silence along with supplies. We'll rest here tonight, Silent said. Get proper food, proper rest. As they approached the main building, she saw him tense. 3 horses stood at the rail. Lathered with sweat, ridden hard, the dust cloud had caught up. The trading post squatted against the evening sky like a wounded animal. Silent studied the 3 lathered horses, his hand resting casual on his rifle stock, the kind of casual that fooled no one. Back door, Temperance whispered. Always. He dismounted, helped her down. But running makes us look guilty. We are guilty of breathing while inconvenient. They walked toward the main building with measured steps. Neither hurried nor dawdling. The performance of people with nothing to hide. Inside, 3 men hunched over whiskey at a corner table. Dust-covered clothes, hard faces. The kind of men who got paid for finding things that didn't want to be found. They looked up when Temperance entered, their eyes cataloging her face. Her clothes, her worth as quarry. Silence stepped close behind her. Not touching, but present. A wall of quiet threat. The trading post owner, a grizzled man with suspicious eyes, jerked his chin toward the back room. Got a cabin out back, clean beds, $2. 1 room will do, Silence said. The owner's eyebrows climbed. He looked between them, calculating scandal versus profit. Profit won. $2, he repeated. They took the cabin as thunder rumbled in the distance. The sky had turned the color of old bruises, pregnant with the promise of storm. Temperance set her bundle on the single bed while Silent checked the windows, the door, the thin walls that would stop nothing if trouble came calling. Those men. Know you? Know what I represent. She sat heavily on the bed's edge, loose thread that might unravel the whole cloth. The first raindrops hit the roof like scattered coins. Then the sky opened, releasing weeks of pent-up fury. Water hammered the cabin walls, turning the world outside into liquid chaos. Silence settled into the room's only chair, rifle across his knees. Lightning split the darkness, illuminating his face in stark relief. He looked like a man carved from stone and regret. "Tell me about the man who did that to your voice," she said. His hand moved to his throat. Old habit, old wound. Some stories don't improve with telling. Neither do infected cuts. But they fester if you don't clean them. Thunder crashed overhead, shaking the cabin walls. In the strobing light, she saw him decide. Saw the moment he chose truth over protective silence. "Worked for a man named Worthington after the war," he whispered. "Big plantation, bigger debts. I was just a drifter looking for work." Rain drummed against the windows. The sound of the world washing itself clean. Worthington had ideas about order. About who spoke, when, and how, and to whom. Silence fingers traced his throat. "I disagreed with his methods." Disagreed out loud. "So he taught you a lesson about speaking up." "Taught me the taste of lie burns different than fire. Burns longer. Goes deeper." The admission hung between them, heavy with shared understanding. She knew the weight of lessons taught by men who confused power with righteousness. "Is he the one you're hunting?" "Worthington's dead." Something shifted in Silent's voice, but the damage he did lives on. People scattered to the wind, families torn apart. Records burned or hidden. Lightning flashed again, closer now. The storm was moving over them. "That's why you need someone who can read legal papers. You're trying to put families back together," he nodded. "One family in particular." He reached for his satchel with the careful movements of a man handling something precious and dangerous. The leather was worn smooth by countless hands, countless miles. He opened it just wide enough to reveal folded documents, substantial money. And something else, a photograph. Even in the dim light, she could see it clearly. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, with dark skin and intelligent eyes. Pretty child with a serious expression, the kind that suggested she'd seen too much too. Young, the face was familiar. Disturbingly familiar. "Who is she?" "Her name's Charity." Silent's voice carried the weight of years. "Last I heard, she was in California. Free woman now, making her own way." Temperance stared at the photograph. The girl's features, the shape of her eyes, the way she held her head. Memory stirred, old and painful. "Where did you get this?" "From Worthington's papers. Before he died, guilt got the better of him. Left instructions money. Wanted his people found, wanted debts paid. His people, people he owned." The words hit her like cold water. She looked at the photograph again, and this time memory roared to life. A little girl crying as men loaded her into a wagon. A sister torn away in the dark of early morning. Promises to find each other that children make and adults learn are just wishes dressed up in hope. "This girl," she said carefully, "she have family?" "Had a sister, older sister." Silence studied her face in the flickering light. "Don't know." "What happened to the sister?" Records were incomplete. Thunder shook the cabin. Rain poured through a gap in the roof, striking the floor with steady percussion. The storm was directly overhead now, inescapable. Temperance set the photograph down with hands that wanted to shake. Charity, her baby sister Charity, who used to sleep curled against her back, who sang in a voice sweet as summer rain, who cried for 3 days straight when the white men came to divide the families. You recognized her. It wasn't a question. Silence saw too much, understood too much. She wondered how long he'd known. How long he'd been watching her reactions, waiting for confirmation. "You knew," she whispered. "When you found me on that trail, you knew who I was, suspected." His pale eyes held no deception now. The resemblance is strong. But I hoped it was coincidence. Hoped? Because if you're her sister, then everything I've told you is true. And everything I haven't told you is worse. Lightning split the sky again, illuminating the cabin in harsh white light. In that moment, she saw him clearly, not just a drifter with a mission. Not just a man damaged by other men's cruelty. Something else. Something he'd been hiding behind whispered words and careful distance. What haven't you told me, Silent? The thunder answered first, rolling across the sky with the sound of judgment approaching. Then the rain intensified, drumming against the roof with the rhythm of secrets demanding to be spoken. He reached into the satchel again. This time he pulled out a letter, official and sealed. The kind of document that changed lives and settled debts. My name isn't McCready, he whispered. The storm raged around them, washing the world clean while inside the cabin. Truth prepared to destroy everything they'd built between them. The letter crackled in Silent's hands like dry leaves about to burn. Temperance stared at the official seal, at the careful script that spelled out truths in legal language. Her world tilted on its axis. She's alive. The words scraped her throat. Raw. My sister is alive. More than alive. She's thriving. He set the letter between them on the rough wooden table. Married name is Charity Williams. Runs a boarding house in Sacramento. Has 3 children. Lightning split the cabin's darkness again. In the harsh white light, Temperance saw her own face reflected in the window glass. Older now, worn by hardship, but still carrying the ghost of the child who used to braid Charity's hair by candlelight. How long have you known? Since I found you on that trail. His whisper carried the weight of mountains. The resemblance is unmistakable. Same eyes. Same way of holding your head when you're thinking. She picked up the photograph, traced her sister's young face with trembling fingers. 20 years of wondering, of hoping, of fearing the worst. 20 years of carrying the guilt of the older sister who couldn't protect the younger. You used me. No, the word came sharp, urgent. Finding you was providence, something I never dared hope for. Providence. She set the photograph down carefully. Pretty word for manipulation. Thunder rolled overhead, shaking the cabin. Walls. The storm was moving closer, or maybe it was just her heart breaking that made the world seem to tremble. I won't lie to you anymore, Silent said. I came looking for Charity because her former master left her money in his will. Guilt. Money. Blood money. The kind of inheritance that comes with strings attached. What kind of strings? He pulled another document from the satchel, this one older, yellowed with age. Worthington's confession, written on his deathbed. Names, dates, crimes. The whole ugly truth of what he did to families. She scanned the document, her reading skills sharp from years of studying contracts and legal papers with Samuel. The words swam before her eyes. Sales records. Human beings reduced to numbers and descriptions. Children separated from mothers. Husbands sold. Away from wives. Her name was there. Temperance, age 12, sold to a family in Missouri. And below it, Charity, age 8, sold to a cotton plantation in Texas. He kept records of everything, Silent whispered. Every family he destroyed. Every life he scattered to. The wind. Why? The question came out strangled. Why keep track of the damage? Because guilt is a hungry beast. Feeds on memory. His pale eyes reflected the lightning's glow. Near the end, he couldn't sleep for the ghosts. Rain hammered the roof with increasing fury. Water dripped through the gaps, pooling on the floor between them. The cabin felt smaller now, thick with secrets and the smell of wet wood. So he sent you to buy forgiveness with money. He sent his son. The words hit her like a physical blow. She looked at him again, really looked. The pale eyes, the fine bone structure beneath the weathered skin. The educated speech that showed through even in whispers. The way he carried himself, careful and controlled. You're his son. Silas Worthington. He spoke his real name like a curse. Heir to blood money and a legacy of broken families. The photograph fell from her nerveless fingers. Everything shifted, realigned itself into new and terrible patterns. The man who had saved her life, who had shown her kindness in the wilderness, was the son of the monster who had torn her family apart. You knew. Her voice came out flat, dead. You knew exactly who I was when you pulled me off that trail. I knew you were Charity's sister. I didn't know who you were. Not really. He leaned forward, urgency creeping into his whisper. These past days, traveling with you, learning your strength, your intelligence, your grace, that wasn't part of any plan. Grace, she laughed, the sound bitter as alkali water. The daughter of slaves has grace. How generous of you to notice. Temperance, don't. She stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. Don't say my name. Don't pretend this means something beyond your father's guilt and your need to feel better about your inheritance. Lightning illuminated the cabin again, longer this time. In the extended brightness, she saw him clearly. The son of her former master, the inheritor of everything that had been stolen from her family. Every kindness, she whispered. Every moment of feeling safe. All of it built on lies. Not lies, incomplete truths. Same thing dressed in prettier clothes. She moved to the window, stared out at the rain washing the world clean. What's the plan now? Deliver me to my sister so you can present us both with your father's blood. Money? Watch us weep with gratitude? There is no plan. His chair creaked as he stood. Not anymore. Because I ruined it by being inconvenient, by having feelings about being used. Because you matter now. The words came out raw, unguarded. You matter in ways I never expected. She turned from the window. He stood in the center of the small room, hands loose at his sides. Vulnerable in a way that might have moved her if her heart wasn't breaking into sharp pieces. I don't know how to trust you now, she said simply. I know. I don't know how to look at you without seeing him. Without seeing the man who sold children in the night. I know that too. Outside, the storm reached its peak. Rain lashed the cabin walls, wind howled through the gaps in the wood. The world was washing itself clean while inside, two people stood on opposite sides of a chasm carved by history and blood. What happens now? She asked. That's your choice. He moved toward the satchel, pulled out a substantial roll of bills. This is yours by right, Charity's inheritance and yours. Take it. Take my horse. Ride to California and find your sister. And you? I'll face whatever's coming. He gestured toward the main building where three men waited for morning. Been running from consequences long enough. She stared at the money in his hands, freedom, the means to reach Charity, to build the school she and Samuel had dreamed of. Everything she needed to start over. Everything except the ability to forget the man offering it. Thunder crashed overhead, and in its wake came a new sound. Hoofbeats. More riders approaching through the storm. The reckoning was coming faster than either of them had planned. The hoofbeats grew louder, cutting through the storm's fury. Silas moved to the window, peered through rain-streaked glass. More riders. Too many to be coincidence. How many? Temperance asked. 6, maybe 7. He checked his rifle, counted ammunition. We're outnumbered. We? The word hung between them, heavy with implication. She hadn't forgiven him. Might never forgive him. But danger had a way of clarifying priorities. I mean you, he whispered. They're here for you. But even as he said it, she saw the lie in his pale eyes. These men hadn't ridden through a storm just for a runaway widow. They wanted something bigger. The riders stopped at the main building. Voices carried through the rain, harsh and urgent. Orders being given. Plans being made. There's a back way out, Silas said. Through the creek bed. Horse can make it if you push hard. What about you? I'll buy you time." She studied his profile in the lightning's glow. The son of her former master, offering to die so she could live. History folding back on itself in ways that made her head spin. "No, Temperance, you have to run." I said no. She moved to his satchel, pulled out the legal documents. "You said these papers prove something. What exactly?" "Evidence of crimes, financial records. Proof of systematic theft from mining operations across 3 territories." Her hands stilled on the papers. "Mining operations, like the Graves mine. Jeremiah Graves is one of many, but he's the biggest fish in a very corrupt pond." Thunder crashed overhead, but she barely heard it. The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture larger and more dangerous than she'd imagined. "Samuel found something, didn't he? Something that connected to your father's records. Your husband was smart. Started asking questions about missing ore shipments. About workers who disappeared after finding irregularities. So they killed him and blamed him for theft to discredit anything he might have discovered." The voices outside grew louder. Boots on wooden planks. Men moving with purpose through the storm. "They're not just here for me," she realized. "They're here for those documents. Graves has been looking for Worthington's papers for years. If they surface, his entire network collapses." She looked at the documents in her hands. Samuel's life, her sister's stolen childhood. Dozens of families destroyed by greed, disguised as law. All of it connected by threads of corruption spanning decades. Then we make sure they surface. The front door of the cabin exploded inward. Deputy Marshal Kane stepped through, water streaming from his coat. Behind him, 3 men with guns. Drawn, professional killers wearing badges they'd bought or stolen. "Mrs. Blackwell." Kane's voice carried false politeness. "You've led us quite a chase." Silas stepped between them, his rifle rising. "She's under my protection." Kane laughed. "Protection?" "From Silas Worthington." He spat the name. "Son of the man who owned her family. Bit of irony there, don't you think?" "How did you know?" Temperance asked. "Graves has been tracking Worthington money for years. When it started moving, we followed it." Kane's eyes fixed on the satchel. "Hand over the papers, boy. Time to finish what your daddy started." "My father was a monster," Silas whispered. "But he tried to make amends before he died." "Amends don't pay debts. Money does." Kane gestured to his men. "Take them both. Graves wants to have a conversation." That's when the world shifted. Another voice cut through the rain. Older, rougher, carrying the authority of federal law. U.S. Marshal Thomas Reed, "Drop your weapons." Kane spun toward the door. Standing in the frame was a man in his 50s, badge gleaming on his chest. Behind him more men. Real lawmen with the bearing of soldiers. "This is territorial business, Marshal," Kane said. "Murder of federal witnesses makes it federal business." Reed stepped into the cabin, his men flanking him. "You're all under arrest." Temperance felt the world tilt again. "Federal witnesses?" Reed's eyes found hers. "Your husband sent a letter to our office 3 weeks before he died. Said he had evidence of systematic corruption in territorial mining operations. We've been investigating ever since." Kane's hand dropped to his gun. The cabin filled with the sound of hammers being cocked, metal on metal singing the song of imminent violence. "Easy," Reed said. "Nobody needs to die tonight." But Temperance saw the desperation in Kane's eyes. The kind that made men do stupid things when cornered. "The papers," she said quietly to Silas. "Give me the papers." He hesitated, then pressed the documents into her hands. She felt their weight, their importance. The power to bring down an empire built on theft and murder. "Deputy Kane," she called out. "You want these documents? Come and take them." Kane smiled, thinking he'd won. He took a step forward. That's when she threw the papers into the fireplace. The room erupted in chaos. Kane lunged forward. Silas tackled him. Reed's men moved to restore order. But Temperance stood calm in the center of the storm, watching the flames consume the evidence. "You fool!" Kane screamed. "Those were the only copies." "No," she said quietly, "they weren't." She pulled a second set of papers from inside her dress. Clean copies she'd made while the men were arguing. Samuel had taught her well. Always keep duplicates. Always have a backup plan. "These belong to the federal government now," she said, handing them to Marshal Reed. Kane sagged in defeat. His men lowered their weapons, recognizing the moment when a game was truly over. "How?" Silas whispered. "While you were busy feeling guilty about your father's sins, I was making sure his confession would actually matter." She looked at him across the crowded cabin. "Some prisons you build yourself. Others you tear down. With your own hands." Outside, the storm was beginning to break. The first rays of dawn crept through the dissipating clouds, painting the world in shades of hope and possibility. The reckoning had come. Justice would be served. But the hardest question remained unanswered between them. 3 weeks later, Sacramento bloomed around them like a promise kept. The streets bustled with commerce and hope, the kind of energy that came from people building something new on ground that didn't hold the ghosts of old sins. Temperance stood outside the Williams boarding house, her heart hammering against her ribs. 20 years of wondering ended here, behind a painted door marked with flowers and welcome signs. Through the window, she could see a woman moving between tables, serving breakfast to boarders. Dark skin, graying hair, the same intelligent eyes that had haunted Temperance's dreams. Charity. Silas waited beside her, patient as stone. The federal marshals had released them with gratitude and a substantial reward for their testimony. Jeremiah Graves would spend his remaining years in prison. His network of corruption was crumbling across 3 territories. Justice moved slow. But it moved. "You ready?" Silas whispered. She nodded, unable to trust her voice. The door opened at her first knock. Charity Williams stood in the frame, flower on her apron, surprise giving way to recognition. Recognition blooming into wonder. "Temperance? Hello, sister." They fell into each other's arms without words. 20 years of separation dissolved in the space of a heartbeat. Charity smelled of baking bread and lavender soap, familiar scents that carried Temperance back to childhood nights when they'd slept curled together against the cold. "I thought you were dead," Charity whispered. "After the war, I searched everywhere. I searched too. Never stopped searching." They held each other in the doorway until curiosity overcame emotion. Charity pulled back, studying Temperance's face with wonder. "You look just like Mama did at your age." Then her eyes found Silas, standing quietly behind them. "And who's this?" "That's complicated," Temperance said. They spent the morning around Charity's kitchen table, sharing stories over coffee and fresh biscuits. Charity had married well, a Freeman who'd built a successful freight business. They had 3 children, all grown now, all making their own way in California's new economy. She'd built a life of dignity and purpose from the ashes of bondage. "And you?" Charity asked. "Tell me about Samuel." Temperance shared her husband's story, his dreams, his death. The pain of loss was still sharp, but it had edges now, defined boundaries instead of endless ache. "He sounds like a good man. The best." Charity's eyes moved to Silas again. He sat apart from them, close enough to protect, far enough to give them space. "What's his story?" "He's the reason I found you." Temperance chose her words carefully. "And the reason Samuel's killers are in prison." That afternoon, they walked through Sacramento's growing neighborhoods. Charity showed her the school she helped run, the church where she sang in the choir, the community of freed people building new lives with determination and grace. "There's room here," Charity said as they paused outside a vacant lot. "For another school. For someone who knows how to read legal papers and fight injustice. Temperance felt the pull of possibility. A chance to honor Samuel's memory. A chance to build something lasting. "I'd like that," she said. That evening, they sat on Charity's front porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. The day's heat was fading, replaced by the cool promise of night. Silas had been quiet through dinner, contributing little to the conversation, but missing nothing. "He loves you," Charity said quietly. "It's complicated. Love usually is." Charity rocked in her chair, the motion steady and comforting. "Question is, do you love him back?" Temperance watched Silas through the window, helping clear dishes despite Charity's protests. The son of their former master, washing plates in his victim's kitchen. History twisted into shapes that defied easy understanding. "I don't know how to separate the man from what he represents. Maybe you don't have to." Charity's voice carried the wisdom of someone who'd learned to live with complexity. "Maybe the question isn't what he represents. Maybe it's what he chooses to do." Later that night, Temperance found Silas sitting alone in Charity's garden. He'd made his bed there, refusing the guest room. Too much history between these walls. For comfortable sleep. "You could have told her who you really are," she said. "What would be the point? She's built a good life. Doesn't need it complicated by ghosts. She has a right to know. She has a right to peace." He looked up at her, his pale eyes reflecting starlight. "Some truths don't heal. They just shift the pain around." She sat beside him on the garden bench. The night air carried the scent of jasmine and possibility. "The marshals offered me a job," he said. "Tracking down other networks, other men like Graves. That what you want?" "Want doesn't matter much. It's work that needs doing." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the city. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell told the hour. Time moving forward, carrying them all toward uncertain futures. "I'm staying," she said finally, "building that school. Making Samuel's dream real. Good, this is where you belong." "What about you? Where do you belong?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small leather pouch. Inside, the deed to land in Northern California. Rich soil, good water, room for a man to build something honest with his hands. "Bought this with clean money," he said. "Money I earned, not inherited. Thought maybe I could grow things instead of destroying them. That what you want to do? Farm? Want to try living without ghosts?" He looked at her directly. "Want to try being the man you helped me remember I could be." The words hung between them, heavy with possibility and risk. She thought of her husband, of the love they'd shared and lost. She thought of Charity, building joy from sorrow. She thought of children who would attend her school, learning that the past didn't have to define the future. "It's not far," she said finally. "Northern California, 2 days' ride. Close enough to visit. Close enough to help build a school." She stood, extended her hand toward him. The same gesture he'd made on a dusty trail what felt like lifetimes ago. But this time, the choice was made with full knowledge, full understanding of what it meant. "Partners?" she asked. He took her hand, rose to stand beside her. "Partners." They walked back toward the house together. Two people who'd found their way through the wilderness of history to something that might, with time and patience, grow into love. Behind them, the garden bloomed in the moonlight. New growth rising. From rich soil, fed by rain and tended by hope. And that is all to the story, for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you, it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.